So leadership. Leadership is something that's been interesting. I've been interested in for my entire career. I got in the fire service about 27 years ago, and I knew that being a leader in the fire service was something that I very much wanted to do. As I was hired and working in different positions, I recognized that there were some leaders that I very much wanted to work for and work with, and at some point realized that there were some leaders that I did not identify with really well. It brought up this question of a leader versus a person in authority. And early in my career, I realized that you can make rank and be a person of authority, but that does not necessarily make you a leader. That question of the difference between the two is something that kind of haunted me, and I was turning over in my brain for years and years and years, and something that I worked to deconflict. Fast forward a little bit, I had the opportunity to write a thesis to wrap up a degree, and of course the topic that I wanted to discuss was leadership. So I had the opportunity, my agency's a little over 400 firefighters. I wanted to know the difference in leadership traits for firefighters versus our civilian counterparts. My thought, with my whole career being in the fire service, was that firefighters and what we look for in leaders are very different from what civilian companies and civilian organizations leaders are looking for. So I set up a survey. Actually, before I did the survey, I reviewed tons of literature. So I looked in all the branches of the military, fire, police, government agencies, private organizations, for-profit, not-for-profit, charity, church groups, any group that I could find. I looked up what kind of leaders they look for and what kind of leadership traits they have. Obviously, I am not the first person to go on this quest, and have found lots and lots of literature to review. Tons of traits and qualities of a leader, and as I got them and absorbed them, I boiled them down to approximately 30 traits that I created a survey for. And those traits are everything from discipline, experience, courage, trustworthiness. Are they goal-oriented, motivated, respectful, empathy? And what I found when I sent this survey out, I built the survey, 30 qualities, and asked everybody who took the survey to rank these qualities from 1 to 5. 5 being something that they very much look for in a leader, 1 being something that they do not look for in a leader. My thought was when I sent this survey to over 400 firefighters, and I sent this survey to over 400 non-firefighters, so civilian positions, that when they came back, I would see drastically different opinions of what firefighters looked for in a leader versus what not firefighters, civilians or whatever other organization looked for in a leader. Interestingly, of these things, when you rank them, the ranking was a little bit scattered about who, what the primary goal or the primary trait was versus, firefighters versus civilians. But interestingly is when you took the data from this research and laid it out to see what in each individual trait, how high it ranked, with the exception of only 3 traits, all other 27 traits, 90% of these traits all fell within the standard deviation. So 90% of the traits we're talking about, the civilians and the firefighters identified almost exactly. And of those 27 traits that we found, the vast majority of them were down to 1/100th of a point difference between the 400 firefighters and the 400 civilians that took this. Of the 800 respondents, within 1/100th of a point, or within just a few hundredths of a point, they all agreed on various traits and how important they were. There were 3 outliers. There were only 3 outliers of these 30 traits. Those outliers were, and on the firefighter side, these are the ones that they felt more strongly about. That was, they were looking for an aggressive leader, and they were looking for leaders that had strong physical fitness. Does that make sense from a firefighter standpoint? I think so. Side note, the word aggressive might mean something different to a group of firefighters than it does a group of civilians, but I did not have the opportunity to dive in the differences between those words. On the flip side, the trait that was more preferable from the civilian standpoint was sensitivity. So civilians ranked sensitivity much higher than firefighters did. Firefighters ranked aggressiveness much higher than civilians did. I guess that kind of makes sense that they're on opposite ends of this. Minus those 3 traits, the other 27 traits all were ranked very, very similarly, whether you're a civilian or a firefighter. From trying to find groundbreaking information about leadership, this did not give me much to work on in the sense that we're all looking for the same things in a leader. So that's great to know on the one hand, but the flip side is I've known tons of leaders that I did not identify with, and if the leadership traits we're looking for are all the same, why do I not identify with them as a leader or being a good leader? That bothered me for a while, and there seems to be more. There's more to it than just these traits. Just because someone's trustworthy doesn't make them a good leader. Just because someone is goal-oriented does not make them a good leader. And as I watched and learned and thought and read and talked to people about it all, this one concept seems to boil up. When I noticed the leaders that I do identify with, it had nothing specific to do with their traits and more to do with why they do what they do. What is their why? And in order to understand why that leader was someone that I identified with, I had to ask myself, what is my why? Why do I do what I do? And I'll implore you guys to go out there and think about this, because as you do, it'll add clarity to other questions in your life. So I'll tell you this, my why I do the things I do at work, there's a few reasons, but one of my whys, or part of it, is that I want to work with anybody, any firefighter, any rescuer, anybody who might respond, and I want to help them be the best that they can be, the best firefighter, the best rescuer, the best commander, the best anything, and that is one of my goals, is to help other folks achieve everything that they can possibly achieve. That's part of my why. The other part is that I want to do my best to protect and save the lives of anybody that comes to our area, citizen, visitor, anyone, whether it's in our county, in our region, in our state, or in our nation. If there's anything that I can do to help save or protect the lives of those that are my protected populace, that's my why. Boiling it down, my why is to help anyone around me that's in my agency or in my service to be the best that they can be. Honestly, to help anybody be the best that they can be. And then anyone impacted or threatened by emergency, to help minimize that threat and to help save them from what's going on. What I realized is that leaders that shared my why or had a similar why are the leaders that I identified with. So I stepped back and I thought about these traits. And of those traits, the traits aren't what make the good leader. Those traits that we talked about, trustworthy, courage, and things like that, those are prerequisites. If I can't trust you, you can never be a good leader. I'm never going to follow you. I'm never going to identify with you. Those are prereqs to get you in the game. If you share my why, and I look at a leader through that lens, that's a leader that I can identify with. So the concept of what makes a good leader is not something that we can just write down and say this is what a good leader is. There are things that are required in order for someone to be a good leader, but what actually rates the person as a good leader is based on the individual follower or the person who's being impacted by this leader. And I hope that makes sense. Here's what I want you to do, is when you look at leaders through that lens of your why, and once you understand what your why is, which is essentially your mission statement, and you find those leaders with all the right traits that share your why, that share your mission, you'll realize that that's the leader that you want. When I look back at the beginning of this talk and think about my first question of what makes a good leader, let's reframe that question to say, what are the qualities, traits, and visions of a leader that I want to follow or that you want to follow? When you recognize those, ask this question: do they share my why, or do I identify with their why? From there, look in your organization, look around the people, your church group, your fire department, your wherever, and seek out those leaders that have those traits, that share your why, and those are people that you can follow, that you'll be able to get a lot of good energy from and move forward with your organization. But let's take it one step farther. If you look around and you can't find someone with those traits and that share your why, maybe it's time for you to step up and be that leader, because I promise there are others looking for that exact same leader as well. Thank you.